So between the time that I did the last video when I basically first experimented with the leap motion and max over the period of a weekend, and now I've made a bunch of progress relating to knowing how I want to use the leap motion with the actual piece of music that I'm trying to write, and started to create a bunch of objects that would deal with the leap motion and how it was going to manipulate audio, how it was going to manipulate moving around the space that it was going to be moving around. So if you remember, the original leap motion tracking thing looked like this and was tracking pretty accurately the different stuff that I was doing with my fingers and with my palm and different kind of things like that, and that spit out into numbers. And when I first started working with this, I took all those numbers and made them into big number boxes and also created these absolute values down here because I thought that I was going to be using them in that way. And the problem with that was that this field, if you have the leap motion the way that it's designed, where it's facing on the ground, basically facing up, then if you're moving up and down the field, there isn't really any sort of interference from other kind of objects. I could go infinitely up higher, and the only thing that you see is this. For this particular project, and because of what I'm trying to do with it, I'm planning on having the leap motion actually on mounted on a tripod facing the performer, so the performer's movements are actually going to go out towards the leap and then come back. And you can already see a little bit from that interface that it can be a little bit fussy because I'm holding it right now, but this arm gets in the way of data. My chest, if I move close enough to it, could end up getting in the way of data. Different kind of things like that end up making it so that there's a lot of extra variables that are involved. Instead of routing everything through that particular interface, I decided to make my own, because the only information now that I'm really concerned about when I'm doing this piece has to do with orientation of the leap motion stuff as it relates to an octaphonic space. So therefore, the only thing I'm really tracking in terms of moving around the space is the palm movement. And then the other thing that I'm concerned with is the number of fingers that are actually out while it's in this field. So this particular square is representative of an octaphonic space. The space that I have here with this octaphonic sound is right now built upon the idea that you as a listener are in the middle of the field, and that everything is being manipulated as if the performer is going to be in the middle of that field also. So if I was going to move my arm out this direction, because the piece is basically going to have a lot to do with how my visual hand movements correlate to the sounds moving around this surround sound space. So if I'm in the middle of the room, then if I move my hand this way, I want the sound basically to travel along these speakers in the way that my hand is moving. But there's also a different paradigm where I would say I was on the other side of these monitors and I was facing the audience. Then if I do motion facing this way from the other side of these monitors, then I want the sound to actually follow in a reverse way than that. And I created basically an interface that could flip between those two orientations easily, so that when I'm working here in this lab, I can do it in the context of being a listener. But if I was going to be performing it on stage, then the stage orientation would be a little bit different. So you can see that on the listener orientation, the up and down is going this way. From the stage orientation, if the leap motion was on a tripod, then basically it happens in reverse. And the data that gets streamed into all the objects makes adjustments to that.